This is Corey from World Music Nashville.
This is Bobby Blazier.
Hey, this is Christian and Dyke.
This is George from Fame Music Radio.
Hi, this is Jeff Werk, tour manager for Eddie Money.
Hey, everybody, this is Gooding.
And you're listening.
And you are listening.
And you are listening.
And you're listening to the business side of music.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of the business side of music. Today we have a special guest here in Los Angeles. I discovered this gentleman through Twitter, of all things.
Was that it?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, wow.
Saw some of your posts and started to do some research. Then I started following you on Facebook.
Okay.
And came across the blog that you wrote. The war is with ourselves, same as it ever was. And I read that and went, man, this is inspiring. I got to hook up with this guy. So Here we are. Gooding, welcome to the show.
Bob, thank you for having me, man. What a pleasure. And what an interesting way to connect, because Twitter is probably the thing that we have not spent the time we should on. So to know that you could reach somebody and something like it's just proof that crazy Gary Vaynerchuk's right. You got to be on every platform and just do what you can.
And that works. So,
that's great, man.
I want to touch a little bit about your history, your background.
Okay.
I definitely want to dig into your blog posts. I want to talk about your tour that you have going out. But the bands have been together how long now?
I have actually been with the drummer since 7th grade, man, when we were knee-high to a grasshopper. We won our little 7th grade talent show, stopped getting beat up after school, and kept on going. So it's funny, people are always like, well, I got into music, when I was young because I wanted to, you want to meet the opposite sex, you want to do this and that. It was just survival for us. But we stuck together, and so, that's, well over a couple of decades ago. We've got a cat named Eric Santagata on bass and vocals out of Nashville, Tennessee, and the drummer's name is Jesse Richenberger. And then a young woman named Erin O'Neill from here in L.A. that sings and plays guitar. And we tour about 7 months a year. One
of the things I noticed was the number of dates that your band does. You guys are on the road a lot.
Nah, man, no rest for the wicked, they say. We do love it. I came, even though I'm a rock and roll guy, soul, funk, blues, Latin, that stuff, I came up with a lot of Willie Nelson. And, you grow up with heroes that are playing 200 nights a year when they're 80. I guess you figure you better get to work. So no, we do a lot of, and we can get into this later. But we started a charity too to talk to kids about financial literacy. It's called Funding the Future.
Right.
And we've been really lucky. We used to just kind of donate some shows, go to some high schools in between the clubs, and we found a real need for this. And a lot of the mistakes I made, I tell the kids about. So now we're doing like 100 schools this year too. So it's really. Careful what you wish for. It's staying real busy.
And in addition to that, you did some military bases.
Absolutely.
Which is close to the heart of my wife, Debbie, and I, because we have kids that are still in the military and have been in the military.
Appreciate their service.
And I do want to talk about giving back to the communities. But let's back up a little bit.
You're the only person in the world found me because of a blog. It makes me so happy because I just started that kind of recently.
Because I do want to talk about that.
Well, that was the one I probably revealed the most. So it's nice to, I guess, just tell the truth. You be okay.
Yeah. Well, let's catch our listeners up to you. So you're originally from the Detroit, Michigan area.
Born outside of Detroit, raised in Kansas.
Moved to Wichita, Kansas, which is my dad's old stomping grounds.
Oh, man, okay.
He was from Heston.
Oh, I know, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then in reading your bio, it says, ask about Gene Simmons and we'll never talk about anything else again. So I take it you were a Kiss fan.
Man, I was sticking my tongue out and trying to figure out how to breathe fireball since I was 4 years old. They played Cobo Hall. Actually, it's that they made a movie about one of those Cobo Hall shows. And yeah, when you see a band like that that's superheroes and you're a kid, there's no escaping it. You're gonna be screwed up forever. So
right.
They were one of the first bands that I loved and drove I had no idea what any of the lyrics meant. Probably thankfully, but my parents bought me those records. And no, I'm actually. Met Gene Simmons at one of the book signings, and plenty of positive and plenty of negative on stuff. But the one thing about that band that I always really took to heart was that they understand that their fans are the only reason that they're buying dinner and the only reason they're paying a mortgage. Yeah. And with that, what all the other hype or anything else, and God knows they have enough hype. They're cartoon character, but they always treat their fans very, very well.
I think Gene Simmons has got to be one of the most consummate professionals when it comes to knowing how the music business works. So whether you like his music or not, whether you like their lifestyle or not, he's a good bookend to have when you're looking at trying how do you figure you're going to run a music entity.
It's true.
Yeah.
I drive my band crazy with it because there's no other Kiss fans in the band, so it's nice. It's a good thing that they give me a hard time about it, and I understand. But no, there's a lot there, and I think Dave Grohl had that quote. You don't have to have a needle hanging out of your arm to be a rock star. And one thing I also dug about Gene and Paul's attitude was you have a job to do. People paid hard-earned money to come see you, and people are going to lay down some money, especially if they're working a minimum wage job. You better give them a show. Don't misbehave.
It's interesting you brought that up because last night, I've been wanting to watch it for a long time, and last night I finally got around to watching the documentary on Terry Kath, who was the original guitarist for Chicago.
Oh, wow. I
And
haven't
founding
seen that yet.
member. And just, the guy was a monster on guitar. In fact, Jimi Hendrix came to one of the shows when they played at the Whiskey, told James William Gershko, who was Chicago's producer, he said, that cat's a better guitar player than I am. That's
Jimi
that's
Hendrix
just how-
saying that something.
Yeah, that's
so you
amazing.
cracked the roof in half. Wow.
When you think about Terry Kath, Terry got to the point where he didn't want to sell out. When the band got so famous, he didn't want to play the hits. That's what the band was known for. He wanted to get on stage and kind of just do his free-form guitar and blues and rock. And the band had to say, Terry, that's what's paying our bills are those hits.
What's his thing said? He goes, basically, I get paid a lot of money to figure out how to be excited about Roxanne every night.
Every night.
And
Every night.
that's the job. So nothing against him. I'm a brilliant player, but people coming to see what you do, you gotta. Actually, there's a club owner told me once. He said, I don't remember the guitar player that told me. He said, man, these are like my jewels, and I know you can't see my hand movements, but he's rolling out this cloth of like a jewelry salesman. And he said, some of my stones are the nicest ones, and you better believe if I'm gonna go make a pitch, I'm gonna show you some of the nicest stones. People have to hear some of the stuff they
do
familiar with, and if you do
that's
it right,
what
you
you're
can take
known
it from there. Hopefully, maybe you can improv on that. But I'm real good at preaching and not practicing. I spent a lot of years where we refused to do any covers, which was also silly because you should be paying at least some respect to the people you love. Show where you came from,
Especially those that influenced you.
Oh, absolutely, including Jimi Hendrix. But the funny thing is we used to have that attitude. Now I've never had any hits like them. They got some fancy problems there. That's like Radiohead having to play Creep all the time. Like, we were over it. But I know that we used to do that. We wanted to show off the musicianship. But if you're doing that at the cost of the audience, not at the benefit of it, I think that could be I don't know. That's a slippery slope.
But one of the things you've accomplished, which I think is really cool, I was reading your bio, and we talked about this a few weeks ago about getting your music placed into film and television. You've actually had some placements, some pretty cool placements. Bloodline, CSI, one of my wife's of my favorites, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
Oh, we got a bunch of stuff on there.
Yeah,
Yeah, lots of good place for blues guitar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bourdain's Parts Unknown,
Absolutely.
The Good Wife. So you've accomplished some things that don't overlook the obvious. If you can't get your music on radio, but you can get it on television or film.
Especially this day and age where I don't think there's any one path. It's you almost have to diversify. There's I think one part of thank you for you do a lot of research on this, brother. Part of it is probably necessity is the mother of invention. You're trying to figure out ways to stay alive and get your music out there. But also I just love a lot of it's probably it's been a blessing and a detriment to my career. I love so much more, and I don't want to say just rock and roll because rock and roll saved my life, but I love a lot of different stuff. I love world beat music. I love Latin. I grew, when I grew up at Willie, it turned me to Django Reinhardt, and then I want to learn classical. And my mama played classical piano, so there's all these other styles that didn't fit what we were doing in the clubs, but I still wanted to record it. And thankfully, over the last decade or more, I found a lot of little homes for that stuff, and that's been really fun.
I think that's something that can influence your writing. When I started getting into the business, we talk about the first show. Yours was Kiss.
Yeah.
Mine was Santana's. I saw him during the
What a
Abraxas
great-
days.
Oh, what a great first show.
Which was, I was probably 12, 13 years old.
Oh.
It influenced me so much. And of course, that transcended into Tower of Power. And then that moved me into Chicago, So
I got turned on to Tower of Power with Toto because I was a huge Steve Lukather fan.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
Still
Toto,
am.
great band.
Oh, killers. Oh, the Porcaro Brothers, my lord.
But it changes your outlook on life when you hear music. And I'm like you. I mean, I listen to everything from Mozart to Metallica to Pat Metheny.
There you go.
And everything in between.
Absolutely.
And I think you've got to be able to broaden your horizons musically. You may not like what's on the radio, and that's maybe one of the biggest battles that my wife and I have in the car is, do you like that station? It's like, yeah, it's okay, but I know, she's not going to like what I have, and, so it's a compromise. But every once in a while you hear a song and you go, that's really cool.
Yeah, this speaks to me.
Yeah, it does. So I think that's important. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back. I want to talk about your albums and then move on down my list of questions I have for you. We're here on the air with Gooding. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag.com. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender with this edition of The Business Side of Music. In the studio today here in Los Angeles, Gooding. Thanks for being on the show.
It's great, man. Having a good time.
I'm noticing you have 3 albums out, which I got to tell you, the titles I think are really cool.
Oh, thank you, man.
That's always, to me, that shows creativity just in itself. The
cool.
Sky Eats the Land, which was released in 2011.
I could tell you grew up in the Midwest with that one.
Yeah. Buffalo.
Yes,
also,
they're definitely Midwest,
And then We Are the Dark Stars. I thought, man, that's a pretty cool title.
That's nice, man.
That album in itself, I got to listen to it last night. Great music. I could really categorize you as one type of genre or another. You're kind of I guess sometimes it's an overused term, which is Americana, but I think that's okay.
Sure.
A lot of radio today is so compressed format-wise that's the one thing I love about Americana radio, because some of their playlists are 60, 75, 100 songs deep.
Yeah.
And it might be Marty Stewart, it might be Willie Nelson, it might be the North Carolina Chocolate Drops, it might be Gooding, you don't know. I mean, they're just playing a little bit of everything. And you got a new album coming out this year, Building the Sun.
Man, we are so excited about that. You'll have to turn the mic off me on this one. This is one of the first times we've been so fortunate to get. We used I'd produced a lot of the other records. We worked with Matt Wallace on this one, the cat that did, and he worked with Prince, R.E.M., did Maroon 5, songs about Jane. Just this incredible producer, but also just incredible human being.
How'd you hook up with him?
Man, it was the craziest thing. We have a group, they're called the Women Who Rock, and it's this group of this just incredible. So when I was doing the Funding the Future, the financial literacy stuff, there was some really powerful, just brilliant ladies that were like, why haven't more people heard of you? I know if you could get a little bit more, you get a little bit bigger, you'd yell about these financial literacy issues. How can we help you? Right. I said, let's do a record together. Help me. Let's put something together. And they have helped back the band, and we were able to, raise some money to talk to some producers, and he just shined, man. We hit it off, and we were barely even remembering we were trying to do a record together, just talking about life. And it was so sweet of you to mention the song titles, because I'm a lyric geek. I love to read, I love to write, and I'm sure I get into that, probably too much in the blogs. But he just really zeroed in on some of the lyrical content and what we wanted to say and what we wanted to do. And he loves live bands. He's good at tracking live bands. And I wanted to make a record that reflected that I have a road band.
So when you went into the studio to record, did you record as a band?
We absolutely did.
That's so
important.
And
I'll tell you, man, my drummer, I'm so lucky. I mean, I already, told you Jesse Richenberger grew up together. But we went to NRG. We were able to do the drums in, one of the just, places that we've dreamed about going. We're so lucky. Man, he knocked those tracks out so fast. We even started cutting B-sides because we had some extra studio time, so we're really lucky. But Matt did great, man. He taught us a ton. It's all the, the stuff but you need somebody you trust to remind you. The whole, don't bore us, get to the chorus. Careful, we don't need a 64-bar guitar solo. You could do that live. So he really shored things up. But yeah, that's coming out in, we're putting the first single out March 2nd, and then through the year there'll be singles coming out in August. That record will be out, and there's a lot of music on there, man. There's some some rock and roll stuff. There's hopefully a couple of grab you folk stripped down things. A lot of funky stuff on there. It's it's gonna be fun. I think I stole "Don't Bore Us, Get to the Chorus" from Petty. No, Petty's other one I love. He said all killer, no filler. That's what we got to remember when we're writing those songs. All killer, no filler.
That you just said something that I think is vitally important, and that is if you hear something and it's a quote from somebody else. And it can help you.
Take it.
Especially,
tell them who gave it to you.
Yeah,
now, don't crib it.
Quote, unquote.
People get so sick of me, man. My band's heard all my songs, but I'm always finding new ones because I'm always trying to read something or get into something. But it's funny. Those are, especially when you're coming up and you can't meet any of your heroes and you haven't played with anybody yet. Those people are, I think it was in Good Will Hunting when he was like, well, he names all these books. He's like, these are my fathers or these are my mentors. And the shrink is telling him, of course, in the, you have to actually have real people in your life. But I tell you, until you meet some people that, can inspire you and do that, there's a real beautiful thing of being able to watch people who have already gone down the path and learn. Don't be too stubborn. Don't make it. Yeah, listen, I made too many mistakes.
That wheel?
I've reinvented too many wheels, man, and I'm learning, man. It's like if you can, it's not stealing if you tell them who you got it from and you change it, enough to, be yourself.
With regards to the album, the new one that's coming out, you're going to be touring with it?
My brother. We are going to be living in the Motel 6 for most of the year. I'm so lucky that we have such good families put up with this stuff. Yeah, we're leaving out March 15th, starting New Orleans. We'll be out for 3 months for the first leg, some festivals in the summer, and then we leave August for 3.5 months. So we should be out 6-7 months on it and taking it to about 100 high schools, tons of clubs, theaters.
So question I always get asked when acts are trying to get out on the road.
Yeah.
You book yourself, you have someone booking you, you're doing a little both? Or?
I used to book it. We've had several different great booking agents. We're actually just now starting with a new booking agency, and we're really excited about that. But a lot of this tour is us playing and then talking to those kids about the financial literacy stuff, trying to give them some hope, a little leg up, trying to level the playing field for them a little bit. I always say, if you don't want to work hard, I can't help you. But if you're working hard, we should all have the same information. The schools are booked through the charity Funding the Future. We got other bands doing it now. Please, folks, shameless plug, but I'm not going to plug myself. I am plugging the charity here, fundingthefuturelive.org. And Carter Halsey's on there. The reminder, some great acts that are going to go help us try to talk to these kids and give them a little help.
And I want to talk about that. Before we do, let's talk about the military bases. You got into that. How did you get those gigs booked?
It's funny you mentioned a booking agent who helped us and really who inspired us with that, because she came from a military family, and actually my bass player at the time, his brother won Texas Airman of the Year. He really turned us on to a lot of the things going on there. It was Deb Tunier with Milestone Agency. And I don't think she's doing a whole bunch of booking now, but just a wonderful woman. And she reached out to some of the bases. We were doing a 50-state tour because I have apparently delusions of grandeur. I didn't even have a single that was working at the time. I was like, let's play a show in every state. I ended up playing bookstores, bowling alleys. It was insane. But we did it. It was going to be the 50 and 5. We didn't get Hawaii and Alaska.
But why not?
But why? Well, if you're going to be out there, let's do. You get a way of getting people excited. What was cool though is the tour. We ended up, once we started doing the bases, some of the other bases got interested, and we ended up going back out an extra probably 2 or 3 months on that, and we went back to 24 more states, and we got invited for a private tour of the White House. We played Walter Reed. That was a heavy day.
To me, that has got to be the coolest thing. And those
we're honored. It's just
they're so appreciative.
Well, that's the thing is, you got to remind yourself. I mean, are you kidding me, man? I'm playing a guitar how easy is my life? And you get into all the drama, think, oh, it's tough. I got to get up at 5. Man, you go meet these cats that have given everything for us and put their life. And I told them, I said, we wouldn't be able to do this if you didn't do what you did. And it's but it's hard to find words in that stuff because that's not apples and oranges, man. I mean, those sacrifices are not me rolling around in a van.
I just got to say thank you for doing doing
Oh,
that because
it's the least we can do.
having kids in the military, my wife and I, that's so important that when someone comes, and they are really truly the most appreciative audience.
Absolutely.
Of anybody.
Absolutely.
They're just they're thrilled that somebody came to perform for them live.
Absolutely. Well, and it's kind of full circle because now that we're doing the stuff with the schools, one of the things we talk to the kids about is to watch out for the same day lenders, 1,000% interest, some of these things, and there's a lot of those same day lenders setting
In the
up on
military,
the bases,
yeah.
And it's really tough, and you got to. People struggling out there defending the country, have some financial problems, and people giving them these bad loans. I'm like, man, this is the wrong people to be picking on.
Well, we are going to touch on that because that's important to me. But I want to jump back to your album real quick.
Oh, great.
Building the Sun. Particular song on there that you really.
Man, you got to love an interview while you're helping me plug the record better than I am. If my management's listening to this someday, which I'm sure they will, they'll be like, man, you need to hang with Bob. He'll teach you a thing or two. Man, I tell you, the singles go like this. The first one's called Troublemaker, and that's the good trouble. We're going to cause the good trouble, help some people. The second one is going to be Bring the World Around, and we're working on that video right now. It's going to be really fun. Man, we shot the video at MLK High School in Atlanta, and we're going to cut into hopefully someone with a, and if somebody's hearing this podcast that wants to sing the chorus from another continent, let me know. We've got most of them. We're going to try to get somebody from every continent to sing Bring the World Around and do the video with us.
So I'm going to jump in right here.
Oh, please.
Bring the World Around. If someone wants to sing the chorus and they send you the video, if that's what you're looking for,
yeah, I'll send you an MP3.
Let's make it happen. How do they do it?
I love it, man. That's great. You know what? Hit me up at goodingmusic.com, and all of our social media sites are Gooding Music. Gooding music, one word, and Spotify, Twitter, which that's great. We met each other through there. We do a lot on Facebook. We do different days. We have different footage of things we put out. And then lastly, of course, YouTube and Instagram. So, yeah, hit us up.
So let's see if we make that happen.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to take a break, but as we go into the break, I want to play the track Troublemaker for
cool.
our audience so they can listen to it.
Wonderful. Thank you, man.
This is Bob Bender with Gooding, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Trouble starts, and ooh, that's when the trouble starts, and they're just a coming for you. And ooh, that's when the trouble starts, and ooh, that's when the trouble starts, and nothing more that you can do. Yeah. Troublemaker, you got my blood up now, you got my blood up, and there's nothing more that you can take. There's poison in the sky, there's poison in the ground, there's fire there on the lake. All of your lies don't mean nothing to me. All of your hate don't mean nothing to me. All of your money don't mean nothing to me. Nothing. Troublemaker. You got my blood up now, you got my blood up. My heart is cold and kerosene. Your big boots on the ground, your hollow sound. You never say what you mean. All of your lies don't mean nothing to me. All of your hate don't mean nothing to me. All of your money don't mean nothing to me. Nothing. Troublemaker. The preachers and the liars, the sellers and the buyers now start to look the same. The pushers and the dealers, they want you on the ground. Let's make that white light sound come around.
listening to the business side of music. Next up, the Indie Artist Spotlight, brought to you by Reverb Nation.
Hello, I'm Kenzie Brooke. I'm 15 years old and from Southside, Alabama. I'm a proud member of Reverb Nation. I enjoy singing contemporary country and pop music.
Nothing crazy about talking to the wind. Feels a place where you used to fit in. And sometimes I pretend that I can hear answers.
Artists who have influenced my style are Carrie Underwood and Kelly Clarkson.
I'm missing you, and no matter what I do, in the silence of this moment, I can barely move. Time won't let me let you go. I'm still the girl that I was before my heart broke. I'll find a way to be okay alone.
I enjoy performing at fairs and festivals and showcases in Nashville.
Moved on, let you fade somehow. Your memory finds a way to break down the walls I made and leave me drifting through just another day. And I'm missing you, no matter what I do. In the silence of this moment, I can barely move. Time won't let me let you go. I'm still the girl that I was before my heart broke. I'll find a way to be okay alone. I know I'm strong enough to move on without your love, and I know someday I won't.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, SoundCloud, and YouTube at Kenzie Brooke Official.
What I do in the silence of this moment, I can barely move. Time won't let me let you go. I'm still the girl that I was before my heart broke. Yeah, I'll find a way to be okay. I'm gonna be okay alone.
I'm Kenzie Brooke. I'm a proud member of Reverb Nation.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of the Business Side of Music. In the studio with us today, Gooding. Okay, I want to talk about Troublemaker. We discussed this real quickly during the break. The concept of this song, how did that come about? Because that's, I got to say, that's about as original as I've ever heard.
Oh, well, that's nice, man. I was talking his ear off in the break here. Well, we're really excited about this video. I'm giving it away here, but what the star of that video is not us, man. It's this 9-year-old girl out of Cajun Springs named Paisley, and she is just incredible. She basically plays the muse. So she's running around this bar like we start out and then nobody's listening. And she goes table to table, and she brings this tray, and it's full of these things that remind people what their passion are and what they care about. So when I say troublemaker, it's kind of truth to power. Like, don't live somebody else's life, and don't live somebody else's truth. You know, figure out what matters to you and do that. So she takes an artist of watercolors. You got to live your own life, man. It's just too short to be messing around. But she'll bring she brings out like this little Wonder Woman little case, and she brings a passport to a woman that needs to get out of town, so we show her going to the airport. All these little vignettes of ways she got people's lives back together. There's an older couple that's kind of fighting, and she brings them a picture of them when they're little, like when they were really, not little, but younger and really in love. And then, of course, she comes and whispers in the band's ear while we're jamming and gives us, whatever the elusive secret to success is. So the end shows us kind of getting onto some bigger stages because of, this muse. But yeah, it's just about kind of listening to your own artistic thing. And it doesn't have to be making money with it or anything else. It's just doing something that, as long as you're not hurting other people, find your joy.
Yeah.
Find what it is. Even if that's just a hobby. Sometimes it's better if it's a hobby. You don't turn it into something that you feel you have to succeed at every second.
So let's jump into something that we've briefly skimmed the surface, and that's funding the future. Financial literacy tour. I know that both my wife and I, we went through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University class.
Oh, wow.
And just loved it and went, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah.
This is something that we can live with on a day-to-day basis. And when I looked up what you were doing on the internet with regards to funding the future, a lot of it's the same philosophy, it seems to be.
I think, like anything, the reason things are called fundamentals is because they're the bedrock. They work, and it's just so surprising to me that this is not a part of every young person's education. I say this a lot, so forgive me if you heard this. I knew more about geometry than how to balance a checkbook. I didn't know what a credit score was till I'd already screwed mine up. The goal of the charity is to make financial literacy a requirement in every high school. And I think if we did that, there would be, I'm not into scarcity. I think if people succeed and they feel good about themselves, they can help others and everybody can do well. And so I don't know the ins and outs of Dave Ramsey's program, but a lot of people have told me it's just been a lifesaver. And so I think the thing here is we just want people to put the word out. Whether it's us or anybody else, we just want kids to have a chance to do well.
I think what's cool, though,
I made a lot of mistakes too, and I tell them about that. Man, did I make some mistakes.
Who hasn't?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I know that you're reaching an audience of young people who are influenced easily. They see things on TV or they hear things on the radio. Instant fame, and you talk about that, in fact.
No, you're hitting on that great, because that was me. I was like, I'll just be a rock star, fix all my problems.
Right.
And I think it's 78% of the NFL, 60% of the NBA broke or financially stressed within 5 years of their contract. It does not matter if they make $1 million, $100 million. Expenses rise to meet income. And, it's really just about getting to that place where, slow and steady. It doesn't sound very sexy or cool.
It's not sexy. It's not romantic.
But what's not romantic is struggling, because if you get in a place of your life where you're beholden to somebody else, you're not going to be able to, not only, you said earlier, live your own life, live your own dreams, but also, it's amazing the things that you cannot think about, consider. Even your own health, your family, the world, the environment, anything. You don't even have time because you're struggling, got all this pressure of debt. The world will be such a better, I think Tony Robbins said once, and I'm not a motivational speaker, that I'm a rock and roller that hopes to help kids not make some of the mistakes I made. But Tony Robbins had a great thing. It's like, you never know where the next Bill Gates or the next, Quincy Jones, whoever this is that's sitting there. And if they're out of there, leaving school with 1,000% loan, they're probably not going to reach their potential. It's unlikely. They can turn it around, but why start them out in the hole like that?
Yeah, and we've seen it with our kids and our kids' friends, where they go to school and they take out student loans.
Oh man,
and they're
that's
just
getting out of hand.
They're paying them forever to get that degree that they may or may not need.
And people may not agree with this, and that's okay. But my 2 cents on that, I tell them, I went to University of Kansas. It was a state school because I was living there. And I was really lucky. Pell Grant, helped me through some of that. It's so much about you, and that really probably comes back to the whole war with ourselves. If you're going to ask questions, if you're going to read, if you're going to, find some mentors and, make some connections, do what you can, you got to mine that education. There's people that have gone to Harvard that have, they didn't use that time and they've got a ton of debt. And there's people that have gone to community colleges, but they were driven, they were disciplined, they came out of there and they've become millionaires because of being able to, really focus on what opportunity was there. I'm not saying that's easy, but I would rather see young people not take
everybody'd be doing it.
Yeah, what they say, so if it was easy, my old manager used to say, if it was easy, we'd all be rock stars. So shut up, quit your complaining. But the funny thing about that is, I don't want to see them saddled with that kind of debt, especially now where that's the interest is changing very quickly. It's privatized. A lot of things going on there that they got to really read the fine print for. So yeah, here's to wherever you're at. Just make that next step and work work with what you have, work with the community you have.
So you're reaching out to high school kids?
Mostly high schools. We do some colleges. We've even done some junior highs, and sometimes it's really wonderful. Now we can like bus a lot of kids in and do something for the whole community. But primarily it's high schools, because once you're 18, that's when the student loans are, you're really starting to think about that, think about college. The same-day lenders are actually, I've seen them advertised in high school newspapers, if you could believe that. I'm surprised that that's even legal. But I saw that back in Wichita, where we're from. So it's really right about that age where, and a lot of times as they get to about that age, if they're struggling, if they're from a really tough situation, their FAVIC kids tell me, well, I can't save. My parents take my money. A lot of crazy stuff out there. Sorry, I get amped up on this issue. I need to
because I think
focus.
it leads into the next question I have, which is, or maybe it's a statement and a question. We're in the music business, and I mean, when you think about
it's all hype.
you think about the title of this podcast, The Business Side of Music.
Very smart.
So many artists that I've come in contact with and have worked with will tell me, well, somebody told me I got to spend $100,000 or $250,000 to record an album. Or on the other end of the spectrum, they'll say, I did this album for $5,000 because I didn't have any more money. And I think what it comes down to for me, and I'd love to get your input on this, is it comes down to, first of all, what can you afford?
Right.
And what your dream is.
Right.
Because the two don't necessarily go together well.
Oof, that's solid.
Someone came to me a while back and I listened to their project, and they were so proud that they had spent a couple $1,000s on it. And I went, that's what it sounds like.
Right.
And nothing against the quality of your music, but the quality of the production prevents me,
absolutely,
as a person in the industry, to go out and do anything with it, especially when you're up against everything else. On the other side of the spectrum, someone that has spent $100,000, back when I worked in the record label, we'd spend $250,000 shooting a music video. Why? Because we needed that helicopter shot.
It's so heavy you said that, because I was sitting at this place called HQ last night, and we were playing some of the newer videos of Gwen Stefani, 30 Seconds to Mars. I mean, big, beautiful, expensive videos. And in the middle of that came that crazy Moby video where he basically spent $1 when the video camera had people just dance, and then he showed his face. And I loved everything I saw, but that was just as effective. There's so much about being authentic and figuring out, I always say, money helps, but money doesn't solve problems. Ideas have got to solve the problem.
Thank you.
I think that you said a really heavy thing, man, about, because I ran recording studios. I mean, I made my living recording other people, and then whenever I had my own time, record my stuff. And that's how I ended up with enough extra tracks to eventually open up a publishing company. But I did anything I could to record people, and having to learn all that, the old school gear, was really good, because the things you learn about, and we're going inside ball here and geeking out, but this is a wonderful, I've heard some of the other podcasts, I know you give them all kinds of different things. For anybody talking about recording a record, you got to learn compression and EQ regardless of whether you have 1,000 settings or not. You have to understand, again, the foundation. You got to understand the fundamentals. And so having to work your way up through a $100 record, a $2,000 record, a $10,000 record, you're learning something in the process. And believe me, again, I'm preaching, I'm not practicing. I thought I needed that major label record deal when I was 18 years old. It would have killed me if I would have had it then. I didn't know what I needed to know. I didn't know myself enough that it would have destroyed me. I have a good friend of mine who does a lot of the band's art, was like, man, you were wearing like purple pants and a bandana. He said, lucky they didn't give you any money. You would have been a tyrant. But that's really the same with the recording thing. I think sometimes those things will reveal themselves, when it's time. Now, are things fair? No. And are there kids who get $1 bazillion to cut stuff without, having to, do the, I would say the sand in the shell makes the pearl. Sometimes the struggle is where that great art comes from. Not always, but I think a lot of times you gotta go through the paces. But I'm really lucky in a way that I've got enough years on me that I learned before. I love Logic. It's wonderful and it sounds great, and I do most of my recording in it. But I had to learn some of the fundamentals before they went there. One last saw, and I think this was who's it? Gilbert, Paul Gilbert. The cat played guitar for Mr. Big. He has a great quote. He said, when I started guitar, I was lucky to buy the first amp and then just turn it up loud enough to get distortion. And then I worked a little bit, and I got. I bought my first distortion pedal for $40. I was thrilled. He goes, it's like these days you give somebody a pedal with 50,000 effects. You're like, here you go, son. It's your first car. It's a Boeing 747.
Yeah.
You've got to fly it.
Yeah.
You got to go through the paces.
Oh, that's so true. I know that Vinny and I we're working on a series right now, a video series that's going to be titled "Help My Kid Wants to Be a Musician." Trying to help parents,
That's a great thing to talk about.
When you walk into that music store and there's 100 guitars on the wall and there's 50, 60 amplifiers.
Yeah.
How do you choose? And as a parent, of course, you got little Johnny who's like, I want that and I want that. If you don't have the financial resources,
absolutely,
you need to learn to start small. But more importantly, if you're little Johnny or little Susie just starting, you need to start small anyway.
Man, it's so solid. And I think, not to take this too far out, but we're seeing this, I think, with everything. There's so many, there's 50 different choices on anything you make. And it gets so easy to think that those externalities are going to solve the problem. And so much of it really comes back to, our hearts, what we want, how we connect with people. A really great musician is going to put, they could take a beat up guitar with a string broken and they're going to do something that's going to tell you what they're about. And somebody with all the gear in the world that doesn't really, I'm not saying they don't need to be a musician, but if that's not really what they want to be or what they're cut out to be, they could sound real bad with a lot of stuff.
I preach this a lot in that learn music in an analog setting before you learn it in a digital setting. Because it is apples and oranges all day long.
We gotta be careful. I could probably be on this podcast. We both have things to do later, and I could talk about that one forever. And I really appreciate you saying that because that's a bunch of blogs and crazy things in that. Austin Kleon is a guy I just got into. I got turned on to him from the Hugh McLeod, that 39 Ways to Be Creative or something. But Austin McLeod, he's down in it's funny, he's actually down in Austin, Texas. He said, and I think this is really good for all of us, regardless of what kind of art you do or whatever you do, he said, I keep half my room analog. It's big markers and pens, and he tears up newspapers, things that are tactile, things that there's only one of. And you can see me, I'm sitting here with my journal, and I'm not writing down things to tell everybody. I'm writing down things that you're saying, Right. And so for me, if I write it down, it's better than typing it in. But he says, I won't touch the computer until I've already got the seed of that idea. And I think for us artists, I'm very lucky enough that I have enough space now in my house that I can have a room that's my books and I write there. But it's a legal pad, one guitar, and a bunch of pens. And I do not turn that computer on until I have at least, wrestled with that song for a while. Because if you've got the core of it, you can produce it any which way under the sun. You can hang all kind of Christmas lights on it. Yeah. But if it can't drop down, do some push-ups, if there's not a cable running through it, I think I stole that from one of Paul Zolo's brilliant songwriting books. If you don't hear a through line, no amount of effects. Well, I'm going to say this on you. You can't polish a turd, man. You're going to have to come up with you got to get the heart of the matter.
So let's talk about your blogging a little bit here, because that was the hook that
I'm
caught
so
me with
honored that I got on this show by a blog of me ranting about my own fear and victimhood and things I'm trying to beat inside of myself.
Because you actually write. I think anybody should go to your website and they should read your blogs.
Well, that's kind of you,
to
man.
me.
goodatmusic.com/blog.
I think it's serious.
Thanks, Bob.
My wife Debbie was watching something on TV, and I stopped her and I said, I got to read this to you. I got to read The War Is With Ourselves.
Oh.
Because it was so fitting for what we were going through at that time, which is,
right.
We've got 3 dogs, 3 cats. We're trying to figure out how to relocate.
Yeah.
And, we're going, wait a second, somebody's already done it.
That's heavy. I can't.
So these blogs, where do they come from? Because I got to tell you, this is
idea,
really deep stuff that you write.
That's awful kind, man. It's funny. You get to where I filled up a half a wall with journals over the years, and you start maybe I've never even asked myself that question why we started doing it. I bet part of because I started doing it a little bit a few years ago, and then we stayed so busy on the road. You know how it is. You make time for the things you care about. You can't have an excuse. I never made time for them. But I think as I'm talking to the students, I get a lot of the same questions. And as you do it for a few years, you realize some of the patterns. And of course, you're going to get, how can I be a rock star? How can I get in the music business? How can I do this? And so I was like, I need to give them one place where there could be some real value. Because what I'm doing is I'm flipping over their posters and I'm writing, Donald Passman, how to be, I'm writing all these books down for them.
Right.
But I'm like, you know what? It's one thing to be that clinical and say, here's all these things you can read. But they want to hear from the person they just watched get goofy on the guitar.
Do you realize how much of an impression you're making on those kids? So you've performed on stage.
Well,
now they want some one-on-one time with you.
Well, I will say this. If you're going to go in and tell somebody I have a right to talk to these kids, put me on stage and let me talk to your students, unless there's another show right after, we will stay until every last time. That's Willie Nelson. Stay till the Sharpie's all over your hand. I saw him do that in front of the tour bus a couple times.
I did too.
Yeah, man. I mean, and actually, Garth,
the trucks are loaded.
brother,
Everybody's on the bus, and
give. And I heard Garth Brooks had a signing at our little mall in Wichita when I was growing up, and it was right. Thunder Road broke, and they said, "Man, you got to cancel this. The line's going to snake around the block." He stayed till 8 the next morning signing because he knew, wow, this is what I've been asking for. I'm not going to start whining now. And I think that's why I feel like with the kids, if they want a question, I want to figure out how to answer it. And sometimes it's hard to hit them in detail, every one of them on Facebook, because there's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
And so I said, hey, you know what? I'll write about this. Come check it out. And then if you have any questions, ask from there. Well, I started writing. And the first two are way too long. If you saw the O ones, like, good, we don't need 20 pages on the 10 tips to, a little verbose, as you can tell, people. Get a little excited. A lot of caffeine going on here. But the thing is, once I did it, I was like, you know what? You know how they say, if you're teaching, you're probably learning. If you almost have to figure out how to express yourself to burn it in, to your own mind and your own heart. And I stopped writing so much in the journals and started writing on the computer. And I'm still getting over my fear. Believe me, I got a lot of half-written blogs in there that I'm not ready to show. But I think I'll gain a little bit of confidence each time. And that's all we can do. You start where you're at, and you just keep going from there. So for you to have kind of found this, and that's the most beautiful thing, for somebody to be like, I'm going through that same thing. Because look, I don't care how cool you are, how tough you are. If you're a human being, there's some part of you that's asking yourself, there's some fear. Even the person that acts the most confident in the world is afraid of something.
One of the things that you said triggered something in my head. I spent 14 years on the road touring with various bands. Yeah. As a tour manager and as a production manager, and then as a manager of artist development. That tour management
is hard work too, man. That's wrestling cats all day.
And I always said it's akin to herding kittens.
Herding cats is the expression.
Herding kittens, as I would say.
That's great.
Hey, where's the fiddle player? Oh, he's out there. Well, where's the drummer? Well, he's over.
He's seeing a movie. This guy's at putt golf. This guy's fighting.
Trying to
with
get
his
them
lady.
all on a bus to get to the gig.
Oh, buddy.
But I said to my wife one day, sharing old war stories with her. One of the things I can say is I've been in all 50 states. I've been in every province of Canada, Mexico, and Europe twice. And
who gets to say that?
And
man?
she says, well, "What did you see?"
Oh.
And I went,
the back of the club and the Motel 6 breakfast.
I'm going to write a book. And the book title, you've heard the expression life passing you by? My title's going to be Passing Life By. Because all I ever saw was everything from the window of a tour bus.
Bob, first of all, I'm not going to steal it because I'm a gentleman, but you better get that thing trademark, putting that out on the blog, because that's brilliant. I'm not even going to tell. I got one right in my head. I'm not going to say it on there because it was my Aaron O'Neill, my brilliant vocalist guitar player. She gave me that's great.
Yeah. If
you don't use that, send it over. Tell me what I got to pay, because that's Passing Life By. That is the road,
maybe
man.
You should write a song about it.
Man, he's gonna be like, my BMI CAE number is 12. I love it, man. No, that's
I think
strong.
that's so important that when you're taking this journey, don't pass life by in the process. With these kids that are in high school and want to accomplish.
Yes.
The old expression, stop and smell the roses. My wife went to Europe. I went to Europe. We went to Europe 2 different times. Mm-hmm. She went for school, and I went for work. And we both spent some time in Italy in different parts of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I can pull out pictures that I took and say, well, I was here and I was there. And she goes, yeah, do you know those places? No. I just took it. It was a photo op for me. So take the time. The reason I bring this all back into it is take the time when you're putting the music together, when you're putting that pen to paper.
Yeah.
Take the time
enjoy the ride,
to enjoy it, because you're going to find out.
Advice.
I just get a chill thinking about it. Your end journey is going to be so much better than saying, well, I was in all 50 states, and every province, Canada, Mexico, and Europe twice.
Right? Yeah. And what do you remember?
Yeah,
what are the man, that's so solid. I think it was Jim Rohn, who was like Tony Robbins' mentor, whatever, said, you write it down, keep the journal, take the pictures, but be there, stop, breathe, and I'm pretty, I get a little I get real excited about things, and sometimes I get all spun out too. It's like, you got to slow down, man.
Well, and I think
I'm trying to meditate. I'm not good at it. I'm real bad at it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if you're like me, the ADD kicks in.
Oh, buddy, I got all that stuff. Absolutely.
I'm chasing squirrels who are chasing something.
Well, this is why we pick ladies smarter than us, man. That's
absolutely.
The key. You got to marry up.
Which I did.
Yeah,
I want to close out the show. This is a question we're starting to ask all of our guests now. What advice can you leave for someone entering the business?
Oh, man, that's great. There's another great blog. I'm going to have to listen to this thing back just to ask you if it's okay to do a bunch of splinter blogs off of it. You got some heavy-duty business in there. You know, I think one mistake I made was just, man, that ego will kill you. Because, of course, you're going to say yes to things that aren't worth your time. That's life. But, you know, the whole way, I think we talk about, you got to go to know. And every time you do something that you think isn't worth your time, you have learned a lesson there. And you don't appreciate the successes without going through the dirt. I think Stephen King said once, he goes, I read about 80 books a year. And he said, I learned as much from the, quote, bad ones as I did from the good ones. And at some point, he said, wow, I finally, after writing for years, went, I can do this. And so I think don't be afraid of saying yes to the show. I was in Guitar for the Practicing Musician when I was very young. It was my one big claim to fame. I was able to teach some guitar lessons at my high school because it was just beautiful, amazing, crazy thing that happened. They put me in there. And I'll tell you, this is embarrassing, but John Sticks, who was the editor, wrote me a letter. I still have it. And he said, hey, man, play every gig you can. And, just get out there, play live. And what he was trying to say was, don't think you're too big for anything, especially when you're starting out. And even when you are there, try to keep planting seeds and do everything you can. Because you know what they say, the same ladder you're going up, you're probably going to pass those same people coming back down. Very few people are going to have U2's career or Bruce Springsteen's career. Right. This is 1 in a billion. We can all aspire to that, be inspired by it. But I'll tell you, I'll just give you an example real quick. You're trying to wrap the show up and I'm going crazy because you're real easy to talk to. I had a bunch of letters come in. And I think I actually wrote this in one of the blogs and I haven't put it out yet, but a bunch of people wrote me, because this was back before everybody was in the music business. There wasn't cheap recording, and it was a big thing to have I'm going to date myself, but it was a big thing to have a cassette. And I printed these little cassettes, and they wrote me to order. They were sending me checks just arbitrarily for $10 going, we saw you in the magazine. Do you have a cassette you'll send us? Trusting that I would send the money. Can you imagine that time, people they pay that for and even trust you? But all these people wrote me. And if that would have happened, if right now a bunch of people sent me money, I would, and I'm lucky. I mean, I make a living, I do a lot of good things, but I would know just the same way you need to comment on everything that comes in on Facebook. And you can have your tour manager do it for you, but they're going to know if it's not you. You have to spend some time on social media. Right. I would write every one of those people back, at least a little postcard from the show. But I was such a stupid little kid, man. I was like, look at that. Look at my stack of fan mail. I'm going to go back to recording on my 4-track. I wasted, God knows that some of those people would have been in clubs now, or one of them might be running Atlantic Records. Who knows who those people were? And I didn't write any of them back. I was just like, well, that's neat. I sent them the cassette. I made my little tape and sent it out. But I think I was very egotistical. I think I thought, well, I'll just get on the Arsenio Hall show and then I'll have a bus and all. Man, are you kidding me? Somebody spent the time to contact you for doing something that you do. Don't tell them, but they know we do it for free anyway. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pay these musicians when they come play your wedding, people. Exactly. Because we got to buy food too. But we love it. We wouldn't put our hearts out there if we didn't do it. Put down your ego, say yes to everything, and every live show, even I played so many shows in front of 2 barbacks and a cricket. I mean, and I've had times I played we opened up for Blues Traveler for 18,000 people the next night. We played the Deli in Norman, Oklahoma before we'd been there enough to build a fan base. And God loved the Deli in Oklahoma. They stuck with us. Nobody was in there. And it was humbling. But you know what? We played just as fiery in there and learned more about our instruments that night than thinking we were great because we got to open up for Blues. Just keep playing, keep saying yes, stay out.
Just so you know, it happens to everybody in this business, what you just said. And so don't think that you're immune.
Thanks for saying. Yeah.
And don't think, hey,
that's right.
You're talking to a guy who was on a tour, private plane, 20 passenger plane with our own flight crew. We're staying in 4 5-star hotels. And I got off that tour and went to go out on the road with a band in a 12-passenger van pulling a U-Haul trailer.
Absolutely.
Driving on black ice in Midwest.
That's our life. That's great.
And then next tour I'm on a tour bus.
Yeah.
So just be thankful for whatever's handed to you.
And maybe there's the good news about if you break a little bit later, you will appreciate it. I know that now that we get to fly to some things, and now that we got great in-ears, and we got 1,000 kids a day, and we've done some tours to the UK. I mean, the first time we got to the UK, we were just blown away. I mean, we've been waiting to do it forever, and I think it is a little sweeter if you have to wait for it a little bit.
Gooding, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure.
This has been great. We're going to do this again.
I look forward. You cracked the whip, I'll make the trip. Thank you.
Cool, man. All right. If you're interested in learning more about our show, drop us a line at musicpodcast@mail.com. That's musicpodcast@mail.com. If you have any suggestions of persons or topics that involve some facet of the music industry that you'd like to hear about on our podcast, please feel free to let us know. You can follow us on Facebook on the Business Side of Music podcast page. You can also find us on Twitter at Music Business Podcast. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on iTunes, post a review on what you think of our show. This is Bob Bender, and you've been listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender for Bob Bender Productions. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.